Welcome back to RandomRodShop, folks. Well, today I'm going to see if I can get this undercoating off of this and we can get started on these mounts. I haven't used this method before, but I think it's going to work. So we're still working on our short bed 1967 C10, and we're working on I've got it tilted up here, and we're working on fixing all of the rust on the bottom. And we've got all this undercoating. I've tried a wire brush. I've tried petroleum distillates to get the to dissolve the undercoating. I've tried a lot. Nothing's really working well. One of the subscribers said, you know, why don't you try one of the little zippy tools? And I played with it a little bit, and I think this is going to work pretty well. Let's see. Well, let's have a look. Well, I think that's going to take it off pretty well. What I've got here is, it's a metal cutting blade, but it's one we've used a lot. And so the teeth are kind of dull on it. Still got some teeth on it, but they're not really sharp. And I figured that was probably perfect for taking this undercoating off. It won't dig into the metal too much. Anyway, let me get after this, and I'll get back when I got it pretty much cleaned off. All right. Well, I think I've found my new best friend. This thing works pretty good. Let me get the camera. So I went over this with the wire brush on the grinder. I can tell you that oscillating tool, that was nice. I got the pile right there that came off of this thing. I can definitely see where being under the truck, you know, if this cap wasn't off, being under the truck trying to clean this stuff off, that oscillating tool will do a good job. I'm just going to show you. That actually wasn't a smooth blade. I think you can see that there. That wasn't a smooth blade. That blade started out like that. I think I showed you, you know, at the beginning. But it definitely took the teeth off and wore it out. The smooth blade isn't as productive as a saw blade. And you can see it really didn't mess with the metal or anything. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. It sure makes doing repairs on this thing a lot easier. All right, let's kind of go over where the problems are. Right? I know this isn't new, and we talked about this earlier. So originally, thought was we'll cut these front cab mounts somewhere right in here, and still think that's what's going to happen here. Issue is on this side. This thing, the rust actually goes all the way back to here, and I'll show you when I get this apart, but there's a stiffener that is separate from the cab mount that keeps you from crushing that frame when you put the mounts on. So there's a second piece in there, and I can look inside there, and it's got just a little bit of rust. I don't know if I can get to it or not. I don't know, can you see that hole right there? So there's some rust on that stiffener. So what that means is I'm gonna see if I can get this whole thing out in one piece. I've already hit it with a wire brush to try to find all of the spot welds. And that's really the big problem, getting the spot welds all found. Let me put the camera up. I'm gonna get a pin on this. All right, so I'm gonna see if I can find the spot welds and mark them, see if we can get this drilled out and see if we can get that out of there. Well, you can see the finding the spot welds is part of the problem. I think what I'm going to have to do is clean off the floor on the inside and see if I can find, because there should be a couple of spot welds in this area right here, but for the life of me, I can't find them. All right, so I'm going to use my little zippy tool because there's some stuck tar paper on the inside, and see if I can get that cleaned off. We'll wire brush the tar out of the floorboard inside there and see if I can find these spot welds. You don't have to do that. You don't have to find all of them. I mean, when you're taking it out, you'll end up finding the things. But in this situation, I'd really like to get this out without bending a whole lot, because again, we're using a reproduction piece, and given I'm having to cut this whole thing out, I'd really rather not tweak anything. So I'm going to do my best to get this thing out without bending anything. All right, let me get the floorboard cleaned up, see if we can find the rest of these. All right, still some I've got to find. But I wanted to point out, I'm going to drill big holes. So the goal is to get this out, and it's okay to put big holes in the other metal. You might disagree with that, but in my mind, the replacement pedal doesn't have any holes in it. So if I get that put back in, I can plug weld through the big holes on the floor pan and over here on the frame rail, and it'll plug everything up. And it makes it easier to get it apart. I'm gonna start with 1/8 inch holes, then I'm gonna get a step bit and just start drilling. At some point, we'll get everything apart. I knew there was another one in there, I just couldn't find it. All right, let me get that one drilled out of there. You know, I've told you guys before, every time I do one of these things, I learn something. Let me show you something. So, I've replaced this mount on a number of these old cabs like this in this body style, but I don't ever remember that end of the cab mount being spot welded to the rocker. So not only is it bolted, it's actually spot welded. You can see I've already drilled out the spot welds there, but there's another one right there and there's another one right there. I'm not sure why I didn't know that, but I don't think I've ever run across that. You guys that's done this before, maybe you're gonna say, well, they're all like that, but yeah, I've never found one like that. But oh well, I'm gonna get this drilled out. I think we're getting close to getting this out of here. So that was that took a little longer than I thought it was going to, but we got it out of there. And generally speaking, it's not friendly. You can see there's 2 spot welds that come in this direction. There's 4 spot welds that come in here. There are, well, it looks like there's 3 that's on the raised section of this thing. And let's see, there's 2 on that side. And then the biggest surprise to me, like I said before, is I I don't think I've run into where those things are spot welded on this side. Maybe I'm just forgetting, I don't know. Okay, let me get the camera and let's see what we got going on here. All right, so we knew the rock, that's the inner rocker, right? So that's gotta be, we know that's gotta be replaced. The floor plan is kind of crusty, and that's the reason I wasn't worried about drilling big holes up on this side, because probably going to end up replacing the floor plan. If I remember right, that patch comes back to about, seems like to me it comes up to the flat spot, but it's somewhere in this area in terms of where that patch panel comes. So all of this is going to be, I'll just replace all of this. The interesting piece, and something that's going to take me a little while to get out of here. All right. So I got the camera up in there. Can you see that? The bottom of that bushing is rusted out. So really I need to get that bushing out of there. I guess it's not complicated, is it? So there are two spot welds up on the top side. And I don't know, the bottom, that all may be rusted out. Definitely got to get that out of there and have a look and see what's going on. Need to do that before we even attempt to fix anything. All right, let me get those two spot welds out and see if I can get that thing out, that bushing out, and let's have a look at it. All right, well, I got it out of there. You know, as expected, it's just a bent piece of metal, kind of like a horseshoe. So when you bolt it down, it doesn't crush this rail. So I need to, you know, basically size up a strap and get it bent so that we can get it in there. Let's see. Obviously, I got to get this all cleaned up. I'm definitely going to have to clean up an old spot weld right there. All right, let me get my little belt sander so I can get in there. All right, let's see if this thing's going to fit in here. Well, that bend is not exactly the same. So I'm gonna have to take some time and tweak this thing and get it to where it's gonna fit. That's one reason why I don't like using the whole panel. They never fit. So, but in this case, the whole thing was kind of rusted, so I'll straighten this back out in the places that I kind of tweaked it, and then we're going to make this look like this so that it fits back in there. All right. That's all of the cab mount video. I appreciate you watching. We'll be back next week on this thing. For everybody that's been watching the channel for a while, you noticed the last couple of weeks I didn't post anything, and I thought I'd give you a heads up on exactly what happened. My aunt gave my wife a quilting machine. She's been wanting a quilting machine for a long time. You know, this thing's 12 foot long. It's ostensibly computer controlled, but the problem was it was computer controlled in like 2005, 2010 at the introduction of computerized quilting machines. So this thing, the XY bed was made in Indiana. The servo drive system computers, the program was made in LabVIEW by a robotics company, I think in Washington State. The company itself was in Southern California, and they wrote the Windows DOS. I'll call it Windows DOS program. It's not really DOS, but it's kind of like DOS in Windows. Anyway, it ran on a Windows XP computer, had a standalone computer. And it has been, this thing has fought me and fought me and fought me. This thing wouldn't boot up, so I spent a couple of days trying to get the computer to boot up. Then when it was all said and done, and I finally did get this quilt machine to actually operate. I had it, do a circle. Remote, the XY coordinates all moved, it did a circle. I decided I want to do it a triangle, so I brought in a triangle. Literally, I was moving from a circle to a triangle. So I just opened up File Manager in Windows XP, and I was going to drag the triangle file into the root directory for the PC quilter. Oh my, yeah, somewhere along the way, that action itself overwrote the System32 file. So the XP was down for like 2 days until I could I'm not even sure what I ended up doing. Ended up trying to install Windows 2000 on it, but it wouldn't let me install, but it let me do a check disk. Anyway, that's a long-winded story. So, at the end of the day, I took all the robotic stuff off and working on an Arduino system to run some Quilter's Sure Stitch encoders so that even though it's not robotic, I can get my young bride can do free motion quilting, which really requires a stitch regulator so that the faster you move, the faster the machine stitches. When you slow down, you want the machine to slow down. At the end, you want the stitch length to be consistent. That's pretty much the goal. So I've been working on that, been fighting. Fundamentally, that's where I've been. I've been working on a quilt machine, trying to get that running. In the background, I brought in a 91 short wide bed that we'll see at some point, and I picked up some really cool parts for the 67 Mustang. I don't know if they're cool parts, but there are lots of parts that I was gonna need. Got all the complete disc brake system. It's got a 8.8 posi track. I haven't pulled it apart yet, but I'm halfway convinced it may have the large axles in it, so because they're aftermarket axles. Anyway, that's what I've been doing. Hopefully we'll get back on this. Next week we'll get this thing put together. All right. I appreciate you watching. And until next time, I'm Random of RandomRodShop, and I'm out of here.